This could be an interesting one.
What is it?
Jeremy Scahill from Dropsite. He's a really good reporter as well. Um, but the quote that they have is, "I've never in my quarter of a century in journalism seen a greater effort to criminalize and demonize speaking to people on the other side of America's wars." Um, which is true. They are quite literally making it like you're not allowed to report the other side's perspectives or whatever. Like they're really trying to make that as difficult as possible for people. And one must ask the question why. But let's see what they have to say.
What does it mean for independent journalism when just purely reporting on the other side is seen as an act of treason?
I mean, first of all, if you're a journalist and you don't believe in interviewing all of the major players in a story, then you're not engaged in journalism. You're engaged in propaganda. I have never, in my quarter of a century in journalism, seen a greater effort to criminalize and demonize speaking to people on the other side of America's wars. You know, American reporters and correspondents interviewed Osama bin Laden. They interviewed Saddam Hussein. After October 7th, when I started interviewing senior leaders of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, I started being called pro-terrorist and attacked. And more recently, the White House has attacked us for interviewing senior Iranian officials and said that I'm engaged in America last behavior. I believe that in a democratic society, or in societies that profess to be democratic, that the public has a right to understand in a factual and sincere way.
Well, for sure. I go back to my question though, why? Why are they being so crazy about this right now, right? Like that's an important question to ask is why are they behaving in the way that they are behaving? Um I think it should be pretty obvious to people. This is how you behave when when truth and reality uh are like seen as biased, right? Like when man, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Like this is what how you behave if you essentially are like reality is making you look weak or making you look like you're failing, right? Like because you are failing. Let's be real. In America's war on Iran, you have like there has been complete and total failure. For Israel's war on Hamas, it was complete and total failure. I'm talking militarily, right? I'm talking like comparing like where Hamas is now compared to where it was like 3 years ago or whatever. Like Hamas is stronger now. Yes, they killed a lot of civilians. Okay, good for them. You know, they killed so many civilians. So proud of you. But in terms of actual military, like battlefield developments, Hamas is stronger now than they were 3 years ago. So, like, all of these things show the total and complete failure of America and of Israel as America's extension and America's proxy. So the those sorts of like anytime you interview the other side and get like more realistic perspectives of how the battlefield is going or how things are actually like what direction things are moving in and what the strategic outcomes of this are going to be and all of that sort of stuff, the reality gets in the way of the propaganda. And so they get really upset with that. And if they were in a stronger position militarily or politically, then they wouldn't feel the need to go after all of these, you know, all of these reporters who are just trying to report the. You need to know, like, the public has a duty to know the opposing side of a conflict's, uh, like, viewpoints. Like, in my opinion, citizens of America should, every single one of us should know what the opposing side wants, what they're like, if we're ever at war with anybody, right? Should know what the opposing side's goals are, why the war is happening, like what the reality on the ground is. Like, I fundamentally believe that we have a duty as citizens to know the bare minimum about the conflicts that we are involved in, especially from the quote unquote enemy's perspective. And so yeah, I think that it is a little scary to see them getting so you know, I think they're going to try to potentially make it like more difficult in the future to do real reporting America's enemies or whatever. Like try to keep the public less informed, like even less informed than they already are, to try and, I don't know, manufacture some sort of propaganda narrative that helps them, even though I don't really see it going. I don't know. That's not how you're not going to lead to any sort of more strategic victory from doing that. If anything, you're just going to get people who are even more lost in like the propaganda that they spew out, uh, like who are unable to tell the difference between the reality of like the reality on the ground versus the propaganda narratives that we're spewing. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what comes of all that though in the future.
What is the other side of this? By interviewing Hamas or Islamic Jihad, or by interviewing Iranian officials, we gain greater insight into who they are, what motivates them. When it comes to Iran, we reported even before the first bombs dropped on February 28th exactly what Iran was saying it was going to do. Iran was saying this to an extent publicly, but because we had sources, what we published, if you go back and look at it, was exactly what happened. It's just basic journalism. But Trump's people started saying at one point after a few weeks into the bombing of Iran, nobody knew that the Iranians were going to, bomb all these places in the Persian Gulf. Yeah, anyone who was actually paying attention or speaking to Iranian sources or doing their job as journalists knew that the Iranians were going to do it because they said it to all of us. So, I recognize we're in a moment where there's an attempt to criminalize journalism. I realize we're also in a moment where anyone who speaks in defense of the right of Palestinians to have their voices heard, or yes, even Iranians, is somehow going to be lumped in with them as though you're a partisan supporter of those entities. I reject that. It doesn't bother me because it's so contra-intellectual.
And to some extent, they have always done this, right? Even if you go back to like Vietnam and stuff, like they didn't want you interviewing the Viet Cong or like getting those ideas out in front of the public. But I think the problem back then, that problem was more manageable because of because there wasn't that many independent news sources, right? They all of that sort of stuff had to go through the neoliberal like blob of like corporate oligarchs owning the companies that then like would you know define what was acceptable or not acceptable to cover and report. So I think that nowadays when you have a lot more independent journalists and independent news, I think it might get a little bit harder for them to bury stuff uh as much, and so they might get a little bit more visibly angry about it as well. So that's like another aspect of it. But